Play.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where in the world you are tuning in from. James is in the UK, so it's good lunchtime to you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty all right, John. How are you doing?
Not so bad. We're obviously having a bit of a pre-chat before going on air. I'm really pleased that you're all over Rotterdam because I haven't managed to watch too much of the tennis there, but I know you have, which is great. So you can fill in the gaps for me. And I want you to fill in the gap, first of all, by talking about Jannik Sinner, because I think for me, he had a landmark win. I know he's beaten Tsitsipas before, but I think it's 4 matches in a row, and the head-to-head is very much in favor of Tsitsipas. So tell me your thoughts on that match for a start.
Well, I think what we're seeing is the continuation of the great form from Montpellier coming into Rotterdam here. I mean, his run in Montpellier was, okay, some people say quite fortunate. He only actually had to play 3 matches to actually win the title, getting a bye in the first round and then having what was Fucinic falling out in the second round. So he only had to play a range of players who were a little bit under his value, especially as he played Arthur Fries and a couple others in Montpellier. But of course, that happened last week. But this week, he was fortunate to be able to give a Wednesday start. I'm sure that the tournament's been very good in the past at giving players who have played well or played deep into the tournament previously to give them a later start during the week, especially at a 500 event where all the seeds don't get buys. And the interesting thing, of course, was that Sinner didn't get a buy in this tournament. He didn't even get a seeding. That's the strength and depth of this tournament going on there. Tsitsipas, yes, when you look at the way in which he beat Ruusuvuori, yes, the second set kind of masks the way in which that match was going. Ruusuvuori for large periods, especially in that first set, seemed to have had Tsitsipas's number, and it didn't seem as though the form that we were seeing at the Australian Open had carried on yet into this tournament. And Sinner was able to carry over a lot of that Montpellier form and really showed a strong level. His serve was strong. He had a high percentage of first serves that were going in and was able to hit the ball good and deep on the baseline and really to actually put pressure on that Tsitsipas backhand, which, you can do that with a strong forehand in indoor conditions, can really cause havoc to Tsitsipas, who, as we know, the backhand issues of Tsitsipas have always been prevalent when it comes to putting pressure on it, especially on fast surfaces like Rotterdam, like indoor tournaments, which can certainly do that. And that paid off in the score where Sinner was holding his serve very strongly to love or to 15 on many an occasion, and it was always a battle on Tsitsipas's serve. It was either first few games of the first set the first few service games in that first set were always going to juice, it felt like, for Tsitsipas, and the break was inevitable, and he never looked as though he could actually do anything against Sinner.
Interesting, yeah, and I like what you say about this tournament being stacked, because I think it's good for the Europeans at least. This tournament does seem to be a convenient stop-off en route to North America from Australia. So geographically, Ethan, I think they come back to Europe, they have a week or two off, or as you say, I mean, some obviously. I'm also pleased you mentioned Sinner's win in Montpellier, because I wasn't sure if that win in Montpellier was because the field was so poor, or poor is the wrong word, but you know what I mean, lower ranked players. But actually, this win justifies that win in a way that he had in Montpellier. And yeah, what about Tsitsipas? Where are we at with him at the moment, James?
I would say we're just in this sort of period where he's not played for a couple of weeks. He played a lot of tennis in Australia, getting to at least the city finals, and then onto the semi-finals of the United Cup, and then of course played seven strong matches. That 5-set match he played against Sinner, where he just about managed to see it through after being 2 sets to love up, and then getting pinned back to 2 sets all. I mean, at the moment, Tsitsipas, he's got no tournaments planned next week, and doesn't look like any wildcard slots have actually opened up. I know that Doha and Marseille, which I'm a bit surprised that Tsitsipas, who has a bit of a history at Marseille, has not placed himself down for that tournament. He's got no tournaments down between now and Acapulco, which will be his next port of call. But what we see with tennis players, Tsitsipas really hit his purple patch in Australia, a tournament which he traditionally does very well at. And we kind of gone back to the level we see from Tsitsipas on a week-to-week basis, effectively on the tour, where he doesn't hit that purple patch. Those mistakes do come, and he's not necessarily hitting the lines as perfectly as he is. And then he just came up against somebody who is in a purple patch in this indoor mini season that we have at the moment in February, in the form of Jannik Sinner, and Sinner was determined. Especially we see it a lot of players that, especially when two players play each other in very short spaces of time, like Sinner and Tsitsipas do, or did, where the person who wins the first match ends up not bringing that same level, or ends up bringing a lower level to the rematch, effectively, where that player who lost has that extra motivation to really go at it and go at the player that beat them, to want to sort of rectify the mistake of the past, as they would see it.
I think you were going to say something else, maybe was it about Sinner, or just something else in general about Rotterdam?
It was just more to be, to always play a caveat when it comes to the indoor environment. That's not always going to be that's not where the big tournaments are located, or the vast majority of the Masters 1000 and also the two hard court slams are outdoors. So although we can say that this is a great run at the moment for Sinner, we have seen him win 500s in the past, but we have also seen other players like Rublev, like almost Felix last year, who went on a bit of a purple patch run on indoors, and then we got to the Sunshine Double, which is of course what all this is building up to, and that level wasn't there, wasn't shown there, and a lot of the outdoor conditions, the sun, the wind, the heat, and the effects that they can have on the ball, then mean that we're a completely different ball game. I always just like to sort of put that, I think a lot of people like to put that caveat into an indoor run, especially like we saw with Felix last year as well, having that massive indoor run. And then the fact that actually that level didn't sort of correlate to his form in Australia, which was a lot lower than what we were seeing when he was winning Basel and Antwerp and Florence.
I'm glad you also mentioned Felix, because he is through to the quarterfinals along with Daniil Medvedev. They will be in action shortly, and you can watch or tune into that match on Game to Love. I'm just sending the link to their episode coming up this afternoon for the watch along. It's in the live chat. By the way, for those of you just tuning in, make sure you hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new to the channel. And if you're watching this retrospectively, get in the comments below and let us know what you think of what we're talking about. So Felix is going to be playing Medvedev. I just had a quick look at the head-to-head, by the way, and it's very much in favor of the Russian. But Medvedev, of course, it's a very different Medvedev today compared to, say, 13 months ago. We always remember that inflection point against Nadal in the Aussie Open final. But, I mean, he at least had a good win yesterday, 6-2, 6-2, right? The first round was much stickier for him. What are your thoughts on Medvedev right now, and also this match against Felix?
I hope it doesn't sound bad, but I was almost a little bit sorry for Medvedev in terms of the level that we've seen from Daniil, especially over the Australian swing, and at parts at the back end of last year have not been to the same level that we've seen from Medvedev in the past. This isn't the Daniil of 2021 where he's winning the US Open and a range of other stronger, bigger titles through through that sort of period. Of course, with what happened last year, the hernia operation, which caused him a lot of issues, especially before he had the operation for the Sunshine Double, the banning from being able to take place at Wimbledon, and a range of other factors have really sort of played a bit of a negative effect on his game. Of course, he was able to show last year when he won Vienna that he still has certain parts to him in terms of being able to win at least a semi-big title here. But we're starting to see with Medvedev, he was still making a lot of mistakes in both those two matches that we just discussed there. I mean, I felt as though if Davidovich-Fokina in that first round match had been able to keep his head more and been able to keep his level up higher, then he probably would have beaten Medvedev. He had his number effectively, it was especially quite prevalent in that first set. But the level that Davidovich showed in the second and third, it did drop. The mistakes, there were a lot of unforced errors that were completely unnecessary that were creeping into his game, and he almost handed the second and third set to Daniil in the end, and that gave that sort of bit of a confidence for Daniil. And then I was covering the Medvedev Van der Zandschulp game on Game to Love yesterday, and it was noticeable that there were still mistakes coming in from Medvedev. If it weren't for the pure fact that Botic seemed to have had something wrong with him, that was quite prevalent in his match. I think it would have been a lot closer. And given the fact that Botic is the home fans' favourite, coming from the Netherlands and being in a tournament that's taking place in the Netherlands, if he was at 100%, I feel as though that match could have been a lot closer. And I kind of predicted at the time that I thought Van der Zandschulp would have won in the end, just because of the ability that he has, that being able to keep the unforced errors low and really force his opponent into making those errors. And it just doesn't seem as though that counter-punching nature of Medvedev's game is working all that well at this stage here, just because of the unforced errors that he is causing, but also the situation where he is being incredibly passive on a lot of those points, which a lot of players are starting to find the formula to be able to beat. Most prevalently when we saw Coria basically putting him to the sword in the third round at the Australian Open.
Yeah, right. By the way, it's interesting to hear Gil Gross a few weeks ago talking about Medvedev, and he doesn't think he'll ever get back to that level of top 4, let's say, top 3, and threatening to win slams. And I am starting to subscribe to that. The longer this period of form goes on, I mean, he could win this tournament and it wouldn't dispel many things for me, except for the fact that he hasn't beaten a top 10 player for 13 months, and he can have the chance to do that tonight against Felix, or later on this afternoon. Oh, by the way, are you commentating on any games for GTL today?
Not today, no. Unfortunately not. But it was a joy to be able to be on GTL yesterday, to be able to cover at least the Medvedev match there. But going back to what you're saying about the description of, do we think he'll get back to that level? Do I think in terms of the level of tennis that he's able to produce, he'll get back to? Probably. But will that level of tennis and that type of tennis be good enough to beat the new types of top 10 players? Probably not, because a lot of them have figured out how to beat Daniil, do have a formula ready, and it doesn't look as though Daniil has anything in his arsenal, or at least is changing anything in his arsenal to counter that at this stage. So, if he comes up against the likes of a Holger Rune, when Holger's fit, and of course we'll go on to his result a little bit later on. But, when it comes on to, those sort of players that are in the top 10 at the moment, they have Daniil's number and they know how to beat him. There's a formula out there which people know how to activate. And, it'll just take, an Alcaraz to really go for him, or, to face a Djokovic or a Nadal properly, or if Nadal gets back to the form that he has shown. That's a question mark in itself and an entire probably video topic. But yeah, I would say at the moment, I suspect he'll get back into the top 10. If he gets anywhere near top 5 again, that would be up for debate.
I know we've got a poll, by the way, going on in the live chat. Who's going to win Rotterdam? Felix is very much on top in that poll, and most people predicting him to retain his title. What do you think about Felix in this tournament so far? Is he showing signs that he's going to win the title again?
He's showing the indoor form from last year in this tournament. The conditions help him. No winds, no sun in awkward directions, and no changing temperatures. The perfect still conditions really accentuate the positives in Felix's game, which is his really strong serve, which can be very accurate and very much hitting the lines when needed, and also his strong forehand, which he's able to really push his opponents back on and really put them into defensive maneuver. And in the indoor environment, that is a recipe to win, and that's why we see a lot of big servers and big forehand producers win well on indoor circuits because of those weapons. I suspect he'll end up beating Medvedev later on. He just seems as though his level at the moment is much higher than Medvedev's, and he'll get that first win under his belt. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's in straight sets and quite comfortable straight sets for that. But at the moment, I would certainly say at the bottom half of the draw, and it's been bizarre because of the numbers, the players that we've had that have entered this tournament. As you say, from the top seed being Tsitsipas to the bottom seed, the 8th seed being Zverev, is an unbelievably strong draw for a 500. You could almost call this a sort of a mini 1000 in terms of the quality that we have here. But a lot of them have fallen away and had a bit of a decimation of the seeds. Tsitsipas Medvedev versus Felix Auger-Aliassime is the only seed. They're the only seeds left in this competition at the moment, and we're going to lose one of them going into the semi-final. So, from such a strong starting position for the tournament, he's going to have at least one unseeded player in the final at the top of the draw. Granted, Jannik should effectively be the 9th seed if you were going to put a number next to his name.
And Sinner, of course, will be in action against Stan Wawrinka later on today. Maybe Wawrinka has also been for some, maybe a little bit of a surprise. perhaps a kind draw in that Bublik has been losing to anyone and everyone. I think even Ghosty in the live chat, you should play Bublik. You might win, given the form that he is in right now. But obviously Gasquet in the next round, he won in straight sets. So that sets him up for the quarterfinal. But I think most people will be tipping Sinner to win that. But let me give some love to Wawrinka. I can see Ghosty asking about Stan in the chat. So let me address Stan at least as a generic point. I got some good feelings about Stan from about September, October last year. He took on Enqvist again as his coach around that time. I remember doing a show with a Swiss journalist as well in about October regarding Stan and where he was at. And I do think this could be one big final hurrah, if you like, for both him and Andy. But maybe he's better placed than Andy. Just that, for me, Andy's most likely tournament or tournaments would be Queen's, Wimbledon in terms of good runs, if you like. And yeah, maybe there's a Queen's win around the corner for him. But I think Stan obviously so good on the clay as well that there's just such an array of tournaments where he can go far at. And I think his performances in October, November, and even in the exhibitions in December that I saw him play suggested he's on for a good 2023. Any thoughts on Stan?
I think, sort of falling on there, we could have a situation where it's sort of the comeback of the 30 somethings this year. We've seen Djokovic, absolutely destroying it down in Australia. Stan at this tournament, Andy with the work he's been doing, I fully expect that we should see some good levels of play from Andy. And I know he's just got announced for Doha as a wild card, and also he's got a wild card for Dubai. So two tournaments he does very well at. But Stan's been playing unbelievably well. He's still got that really strong serve. Again, that really helps in indoor conditions. Strong forehand that goes alongside with it. And I agree. I remember watching his run to the semi-final in Metz I think it was in the late September when that tournament took place. And he was certainly starting to show that, he definitely deserves to be up there among the top 50 players, and he can take on and beat possibly top 20 players as well. It will be a new challenge for him when he comes up against Sinner. Certainly somebody who is on a bit of a purple patch as it currently stands at the moment. And I would expect Sinner to win that match, but Wawrinka will certainly show some form and show some grit and determination in making that a contest going forward.
Let's finish with one more comment about Rotterdam, and let's talk about the progress of, hopefully I'm going to say his name right, Brouwer, I think is the name, the Dutch wildcard. Tell me your thoughts on his run to, obviously, the quarterfinals.
So it's I looked it up because I've seen his name in challenger draws before. I think his name's in the Surbiton draw when I went to that tournament last year. But he's always. But I was quite surprised when I saw that he managed to get the win against Husler and then showing such good form to actually come into the match against Rune. But as 26 something, he sort of really has come out of the blue effectively with this sort of run. I would probably say that this may just be a tournament specific sort of run that we're seeing here, like we saw with Tim van Rijthoven last year into Hergenbosch, and a range of other players as well who tend to do quite well at a home-based tournament where they get a wild card, they get the crowd on their side. It almost feels like a bit of a Davis Cup atmosphere. From a British perspective, we know how well James Ward used to play in Davis Cup atmospheres. He managed to beat John Isner when John was in his prime. That one time where he's a really good run at this stage here. He's got himself to the quarterfinals after he really was the better player against Rune. I don't know. We know that Rune had that wrist injury that came into play in this match, and part of the reason why Rune ended up retiring in the end, 4-love down in the second set was because of that wrist. But in the second, but certainly in the first set, where it seemed as though both players were physically all right, Brouwer was really able to really accentuate the key parts to his game. What was also quite interesting to see for his game was the fact that the amount of pace he was able to take off the ball at key points during the match. He was not prepared and had a game plan where he was not going to go toe to toe at the baseline with Rune, because he knows that if he went toe to toe with the baseline with Rune, it wasn't going to work. And if he tried to actually match him pace for pace, so he took the pace off the ball a lot, added a lot of shape to it, which is really good to see, even on an indoor climate where it is quite hard to add shape to the ball, to actually create an extra tactic, which really flummoxed Rune at points. and caused a lot of the issues that Rune faced in terms of a lot of breaks and a lot of easy holds for the Dutch wildcard, who is going to see a massive new career high from the end of this. He's now going to look as though he's now knocking on the doors of potentially getting an automatic entry into the French Open, which I'm sure is now a lot of players sort of aim at this stage, and a good run here has helped him do that.
Yeah. Elsewhere, away from Rotterdam, some good wins yesterday for Fritz and Mannarino in straight sets in Delray Beach. Particularly Mannarino over JJ Wolf. I think that's a really a good straight sets win for him. In Buenos Aires, we had Schwartzman going down in straight sets in his homeland, so that'll be disappointing. I know why James, I think, might be smiling there, because I nicknamed it the Diego Schwartzman Open a few years ago when it looked like he had a fairly easy run to the title, but he actually didn't manage it. It was in 2021. But Musetti as well, winning in straight sets. That, of course, is where Carlos, I was going to say Carlos Moya, Carlos Alcaraz is making his comeback. Tell you what, that'd be a hell of a comeback if Moya was making a comeback down there. But anyway, so
quite
yeah,
literally a master versus apprentice sort of match that would be.
Yeah, that would be the comeback of the 50-year-olds rather than 35-year-olds. But anyway, so yeah, some nice wins there, and Alcaraz has only played one match so far, so it's a little bit difficult to assess his level, and of course that was in 3 sets. Any thoughts on either of those 2 tournaments?
So I've watched a bit of Buenos Aires. Of course, for somebody like he supports Cam Norrie, it's been a tournament that I've been interested in. I'm still really concerned with Cam at this stage here. He managed to get a win against. I'm trying to make sure I pronounce his name correctly, because he was another one of those sort of challenger players that really is Falco Diaz Acosta. There we go, got the name right just there. He managed to get the win there, but it was partly helped by the fact that Falco got cramped midway through the final set tiebreaker, which really prohibited his movement. Cam still seems to have a lot of confidence issues when it comes to the forehand and when it comes to the serve. They come in different spats. It seems as though at the start of the match, his serve tends to be quite good, but his forehand, it can fly long constantly, or it can be very weak and hit the net. And then as the match progresses, the forehand seems to get better, but then the serve ends up, really faulting at a point. I really don't know. It really seems as though that final in Auckland, where he was on top, 4-1 up, looked as though he was about to get a double break against Gasquet. Falling from there to losing that match has really psychologically hit him really quite badly. I almost compare it to what we saw with Sabalenka last year with her serve, and how at the start of the year it just completely wasn't there at all, and having to do the so many double faults in the match and having to do the underarm serves just to get the ball into play. I hope with more games that Cam will be able to bring that back. And I suspect it'll be a tough match. I know he's at 4:30 GMT to play against I'm going to be able to butcher this Argentinian name. I do apologise. Thomas Martin Veri. I think that's how you describe it. That yet again another player who sort of hangs around that sort of clay court challenger circuit, especially in South America. But then going, of course, to the top of the draw, Carlos seemed to play fairly well. You'd expect a level drop with what happened in the second set and him losing that second set to De Jure or Laszlo Jure in there. But then he's going to face another Eastern European who's an absolute clay court specialist in Lealovic later on today. I was a little bit surprised with Thiem and his match against Varillas, given the fact that he got that good win against Alex Molchan. Granted, Alex Molchan hasn't really played the same level of tennis as we saw, in that Leon run at the just before the French Open. But it was still a good win for Thiem to get against a seeded player, and then comes up against Varillas, where you'd expect Thiem, now that he's at this newer level that we're seeing at the moment, to win that match. And he actually beat Varillas, I think it was in Gstaad last year in the post-Wimbledon clay. For him then to actually look second rate and second best and really looked quite poor and I say weak in terms of the shots that he was placing. He didn't seem as though he was the main aggressor and the main person in charge of that match. And then Varillas pretty much put him away pretty straightforwardly. And Musetti did fairly well, coming onto the clay, one of his favourite surfaces. And it's all looking as though it's going to be some interesting quarterfinal matches we'll see there. I don't suspect we'll see all the seeds get through, but we'll see what happens.
It's an interesting decision as well for Norrie to come off the hard courts and have a tournament on clay. I don't know if he signed up for Rio as well. Okay, so he's deciding to have a little spell on clay. Maybe he wants to improve his chances during the clay court season, because of course then you've got to go back to the hard court. I would love to have a pen and paper in a few hours and play around with the ATP calendar and the WTA one as well, and fix some of these strange anomalies. I mean, I'm sure we could have the Sunshine Double a couple of weeks earlier, and then we could go to the clay in a smooth run, if you like, and have Buenos Aires and Rio in March, if you like. And
I think if we could really rearrange it, you would probably want to try and make Rio some sort of Masters event to actually have that at the combination of a few weeks, and actually make Buenos Aires a 500. And then you could have Cordoba and Santiago maybe happening at the same time the week before. So then you actually do have a bit more of a better run up there. I know with Cam, I think it's partly down to his coach, Falco, Falco, who's Argentinian himself and based in Buenos Aires. And I know he's done a lot of training down in South America at points because of his connections with TCU. And I saw a lot of TCU hats that were in the stands as well. And I think a lot of players just like the idea of spending a few weeks down in South America, because, barring this little run that you have here, there is no other opportunity unless you're going to do some sort of fancy, exhibition tour, which Rafa and Rune did at the Rune did at the back end of last year, to actually go down to South America. And I know that Medvedev has said in an interview once that at some point before he retires, he will spend a February doing the South American circuit, just to be able to actually spend some time down at that point in the world. I know Cam, he didn't have the best of starts to the clay court season last year. He had a bit of an unlucky draw where he drew Albert Ramos Viñolas, who seems to be his sort of arch nemesis on clay, where he constantly gets beaten by him on the surface, and then he had a bit of a bad run in Barcelona, which meant that he ended up playing a 3.5-hour match, followed by them playing Alex de Minaur in the quarterfinals in Barca. So I know that he sees that as a surface which he can do well on. We know that he's won a title on clay with Leon last year, and that he can see himself having a bit of a deep run in Roland Garros, and he just wants to make sure that he has those clay court parts of his game locked in, so he's ready for that. I know that he's going to play Acapulco before he goes back onto the Sunshine Double, which is good to see. I know that Acapulco was a place last year where he got to the final and he just came up against a red hot Rafa, so no great shame from losing that match. But yeah, it is an interesting bit. I know a stat I saw was that he's the first British player to play in Buenos Aires since the tournament's creation.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
No other British players ever played down there.
Anyway, I see that Dimitrov has won the first set against de Minaur, but he's actually 4-love down in the second, so that should be going to a third set, and I think that doesn't surprise too many people. Those two players fairly evenly matched. Let's just do a bit of housekeeping. Make sure you hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Feel free as well to send in a super chat, just like that. You just press the button, and it helps support the channel. So you can make a donation of your choice, anywhere between $1 and $1 billion. You can donate to us. I'm not sure if you can donate $1 billion, but try it and see how it goes. You could also, by the way, make sure you hit the like button and check out some of our other stuff that we've been doing. I did an interview with Liam Brody yesterday. I'll post a link to that in the live chat. Actually, I can just send that to you guys right now. So check that out as well. And make sure you give that video a like too. Let's go over to the women's tournament, if you like, in Doha. I'm very excited about Maria Sakkari against Jessica Pegula. I've seen, I haven't watched much of the tournament tennis there, but I have seen how Sakkari's run has been a bit epic in terms of 3 sets, in terms of nail biters. I think Qinwen Zheng, of course, was also very well known for an unbelievable tweener that Zheng pulled off, but she also went 3 sets. She's had a tough run. I'm just trying to think who she has played there, actually. Oh, by the way, just a quick mention of Artur Fierce. I'm going to answer that question for you very quickly, Ghosty. I think he's not a flash in the pan. He's 18 years old, so that's a good point. He had a good run in Montpellier and only lost, I think, to the eventual winner, Sinner. Good win against Hallis there as well. So, yeah, I'm big on him. His idol
He's
is
been
Federer.
offered a wild card for Marseille as well, so he'll be playing main draw next week.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, good to know. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of him, and he's still very, very young. I know he's a big fan of Federer and Lewis Hamilton. I think he's also touched on him, so he's a fan of all sports, and keep an eye out for him. But I can't say much more than that right now, Ghosty. Anyway, back to who was I talking about? Oh yeah, Maria Sakkari. She's had a bit of an epic run this week in terms of because the reason why I mention it is just because every time she goes into a third set and it gets tight, I always think she's going to get tight. And so she had the matches against Zheng and Garcia. What a tough run she's had. I know she beat Alexandrova in straight sets in between. And now she's going to play Ghosty's favorite player, Jessica Pegula, in the semi-final. And of course, you know, she's only won one title in her career. And I think, but listen, it's such a tough run to beat Zheng, Garcia, Pegula, and whoever she meets in the final. What are your thoughts on that match against Pegula?
I mean, we're seeing from Pegula what we usually see from JPEG as an acronym sort of goes to these days, of consistently beating the players that she should beat. She beat Beatrice Haddad-Maia in pretty comfortable circumstances for a quarterfinal. That was sort of to be expected. Again, Ostapenko can be a very dangerous character, and we saw by the fact that she lost the second set that did take place. But you know, JPEG was able to keep her level up, and we know Ostapenko can be a roller coaster, a real roller coaster when it comes to her form in matches. She can be absolutely red hot at one part, and then the hitting unforced errors from the weirdest positions from others. Was kind of lucky by the fact she got a buy into the second round. I know a few other players, you know, it was only the top 4 seeds that were able to do that. But of course, we know from this tournament that it's one of those ridiculous tournaments which has way too many top class players in it for a 500, and you've got situations where you've got, you know, top 30 players having to play qualifying just to get into the event. Again, the Sakkari, we do see these good runs that take place. I think it was very much a level drop against the Garcia, which caused the loss there. I did watch I was able to catch the final. The final set tiebreaker. I think it was quite fortunate. It was between the end of a Rotterdam match and a bit of a gap in the tennis there. And I really like Garcia. I was able to actually go see her in Lyon a couple of weeks ago, which was excellent.
You went to Lyon, did you?
Yeah, I went down there to Lyon. The tickets were very cheap, which was quite good. And also, there's a lot of low cost airlines in the UK tend to be quite or to be able to get out of the UK seems to be quite a good thing. And it's one of the things which I think is Ghost said in the chat there about me trying to convince him to go to Monte Carlo. There is a lot of very affordable ways to get into a lot of tournaments throughout Europe. And the French, the French tend to be very good at putting on a lot of main tour events there. Granted, the event in Lyon, it was a great atmosphere when Garcia was in there, but it was one of those classic things that, when Garcia was not playing, that there were a lot of empty seats. But that's to kind of be, unfortunate to be expected of a lot of tournaments there. But yeah, like I said, it seemed like it was a bit of a level drop in that final set tiebreaker. A lot of unforced errors from Garcia, though. It's part of her game, especially on the second set returns, to really step in. But there are points in which you just feel like saying, please, just be a bit conservative when you do this. You will be able to get the ball back with some degree of pace and precision if you just wait. But it's part of Garcia's game. She will step so far into the baseline and really play that aggressive, overbearing type of tennis on her opponent. And Sakkari is was just able to sort of ride through that. But we'll now play Pegula in the semis, just as we have Iga versus Kudermetova at the top of the draw.
Yep, indeed, James. If you wonder what I was doing, I was just fixing a couple of electrical things. If you wonder why I was sort of disappearing from the camera, I was still very much listening to. Yeah, listen, that's very exciting. Iga as well is involved in the other semi-final. I think that's going to be on Game to Love as well later. But listen, I've got to get going, James. So I just want to say a big thank you to you for stopping by and assisting me, at least with Rotterdam in particular.
That's all right. It's been great to come on.
Great, James, and I'm sure we'll be crossing paths again very, very soon. I have posted in the live chat the interview I did with Liam Brody. Thank you, Ghosty, for your compliment and also your super chat. I've also pinned in the live chat the opportunity to join Talking Tennis as a member, so you can get a few perks, such as including... what do you get? Oh, yeah, exclusive footage and a few other bits and pieces that I'm working on. Yeah, thanks, Ghosty. It's great to have you on board today, as it was to have all of you, by the way, joining in. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. And I will leave you all with this little 10-second reminder. You all know what you've got to do. You have to do this. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.